As I look at what the roster for this coming season, there's a couple of unknowns, and Obi Toppin being one, but Mathurin to me, and I'm so curious about your opinion on this, seems like such a swing player because he's said, and I've heard you say that the expectation is that he's going to start. And just looking back at last season, Nembhard and Haliburton were, if you're just looking at like who played the most minutes together in the backcourt, those guys shared the court a lot. It sounds like if Mathurin is out there, you're certainly going to hope that he can defend, and I guess we'll see, and hope that he can do a lot of the other things that don't involve getting fouled and being a shot creator for himself, essentially. I'm so fascinated by the Mathurin, Haliburton, and then Brown, I guess, and Hield comes off the bench. Maybe that just the push and pull that's going to create on offense and defense is fascinating to me. How do you see Mathurin, taking up some of these new tasks that he's just going to have to? The defensive responsibility will be bigger, right? I assume, and he's going to be asked to do just more than score, I would imagine, if he's going to be a starter and not what I thought last year was a really effective, prototypical 6-man spark plug type of scorer.
Yeah, when you consider swapping Buddy out for Ben, it's like if the question was in the short term that the Pacers just want to win games, I think the clear answer would be you would be starting Buddy Hield. Because if you look at the numbers, like they did narrowly outscore opponents with Buddy and Tyrese both on the floor. When either just one of them was on the floor without the other, they got wrecked. Like both cases, if Tyrese was out there without Buddy, I think they got outscored by like 7.99. If Buddy was out there without Tyrese, I think they got outscored by like 6.3. So the reasons for that, like Tyrese is the engine of what they do in transition, but Buddy is very much an extension of it. He led the league and made transition threes last year per game. He led the league in attempts between 22 and 18 seconds on the shot clock. His willingness to run off of makes and misses and be able to stop and pop is obviously very valuable. And then also in the half court, the tension that he provides as a ghost screener, like one of the main tactics if Tyrese gets a switch is they will use Buddy to go ghost that switch. He provides tension as a stack screener. He just knows where to move in tandem with Haliburton. They have a real wavelength. That was the number one assist combo in the NBA on made threes. So I think that you would still lean Buddy there if you were just solely trying to win games. But in the long term, the Pacers need to know by the end of next year. I like that you said how critical of a year this is going to be because they need to know, is he a critical piece of this core? Is he a foundational piece or does he top out as more of a 6-man? And like, it's going to be interesting to watch because his usage swung pretty wildly. Like it was like 19% when he played with Tyrese versus like 26% when he didn't. So the arrangement made sense last year, I felt, to bring him off the bench and also just the accountability of it. Like they made him earn those minutes and earn that by the end of the season and like really held him accountable defensively that if he made mistakes on that end of the floor, like it just playing time wasn't unconditional. There was an earned element to it. And I think that there was value to that. But they need to know by the end of next year, how he fits with Tyrese. And I think that means starting him. So it will be interesting to watch. Like if because of what some of the limitations are in his game, if they're also starting Bruce Brown and they're also starting Obi Toppin, that's going to be a difference than when your middle three starters were Buddy, Nembhard, and Nesmith as far as like half court spacing. And they already weren't a great half court offensive team last year. I think they were like 22nd according to Cleaning the Glass. So if Ben sees more defenders loading up on his drives because of that, and he already struggles with passing out of drives, how much patience are they going to have rather than being like, okay, this isn't working, we're going to go to Buddy Hield? Like, I think you're going to have to exercise patience.
Yeah. What Mathurin, so with Mathurin, you say, and I think this is right, that the Pacers need to know what they have, sort of, I'm paraphrasing, but what singular skill do you think the Pacers would be most encouraged were they to see him show it in season 2? Because they're, he's just watching him play. He's a quirky catch and shoot player. Like he doesn't seem to like it, but he has such other innate skills with, drawing contact and there's so much there. What do you think the Pacers are, maybe behind closed doors, or is it obvious? Like they really need him to show this to feel good about going forward?
I actually think it's like 3 main things. If I had to pick one, I like that you said that he's a quirky catch and shoot player because he's very wired to catch and drive and spot up situations. And I think he still needs to grow in his read of closeouts because he started last year shooting the ball at a pretty good level. And then after about midway through that really tapered off. I think he finished it around like between 31 and 33% on jump shots. So he started seeing shorter closeouts. And when he sees the shorter closeouts, he has a tendency, he wants to play out a triple threat. So his go-to is to jab right and to put the ball on the floor with his left. He drives left on like 60% of his drives, and he'll do that even when he doesn't see a closeout. And this is why I think that he's going to see change in how he gets guarded next year, because if he's not hitting the three at a decent level and then he's automatically driving to his left, I wrote a piece on Patreon where I tracked all of his passes, skip passes, and passes to the right side of the floor from the left side of the floor, and he never made one with his left hand. So at Summer League, you could see times where they were really loading up on the drives because he loves to rip the ball baseline and go to his left. If you bring the second help defender to him, he ranked like in the bottom 5% of pass percentage among players who averaged at least 5 drives per game. So there's already reason to do that. And then if the spacing's less, there's going to be even more added reason to do that. So I think just shooting the inflow shots that come to him without double clutching or kind of playing with his food would be really big for him, because that'll allow him to beat the first level of the defense while you're still waiting for his passing to develop, because I think that's going to take time. Because I think some of it's skill-based and some of it's processing-based in terms of, him recognizing where kick-out avenues are. So I think the shooting is number one. But if you were to ask the Pacers, and I think Chad Buchanan even touched on this on the broadcast at Summer League, they need to see his shot go back where it was at the beginning of last season. They want him to pass the ball when he gets to the rim and recognize when he needs to pass the ball. And then defensively, they need him to make strides in most areas. There's just not a lot of things you can list right now where he's like really strong defensively, but he's so special at drawing contact. I do want people, like, if you didn't watch the Pacers a lot last year, over the last 5 seasons, there's only been 5 rookies who have averaged over 5 free throw attempts per game. And these are high-level players. It's Zion, Palin-Bercaro, Mathurin, Luka, and Trae Young. So that's the list. So yeah. He's very good. He's very flexible in the air. He definitely bends into contact. It's a gift, and it's not one that the Pacers have had in abundant supply for a very long time. So
you sort of alluded to this earlier, but if the continued investment in Mathurin's development is going to be so stark, you've now added Bruce Brown. You have Tyrese Haliburton. Buddy Hield and Andrew Nembhard, it seems like one of them is going to, kind of suffer from this. And I think it's easy to say, well, Buddy Hield's about to be a free agent. He might not be happy coming off the bench anyway. Will it be him that's marginalized? But also because of his shooting and the way this team is built, you wonder if he might be a little bit more important than Nembhard. Do you see either one of them seeing their roles be put in jeopardy or be diminished significantly because of how invested the Pacers are? Again, not just in Mathurin, but they did just pay Bruce Brown a lot of money.
The one that concerns me the most is the potential for Andrew Nembhard's role to get crunched, because I think with Buddy, it's most logical for him to be the first player off the bench and come into the game because of what his wavelength with Haliburton is. I suspect that he will come in early and that Ben might be the first player out just so that he can have more room to stretch his legs. And because defensively, there's going to be more insulation for both of them, potentially in bench lineups. If you're talking about, Nembhard, TJ McConnell, Jarace, and then whoever the 5 person ends up being. But with Andrew, it's interesting because obviously 2-game sample sizes of Summer League are immensely, meaningful and tell you everything about how a player is going to play the next year. But Andrew was very impressive in those 2 games. And the way you can tell how impressive he was is by what the offense looked like when he was no longer playing. It was very rough, them getting into their sets. And I just thought he was very comfortable moseying to his spots. He plays slow in the best possible way when he's manipulating the pick and roll. And defensively, he was quite good. And you could tell this by how often you could hear their bench saying, good Drew, when he was veer switching and really navigating out at the point of attack. I think he adds a lot, but then what you just said, if the starting lineup, Andrew's reward for that play at Summer League might be going from being a 2nd-round pick who became a key starter largely because of his defense to now I've shown really good reads offensively to the point where I felt after 1 quarter at Summer League, he had shown enough. He played the entire first quarter and he didn't need to play anymore. He did, but he didn't need to play anymore to potentially, depending upon what they do with TJ McConnell, you go from being a starter to maybe an off-ball guard in the second unit. And Buddy Hield's the 6th man. So I think he's probably the most likely candidate to get crunched. And if I were in charge, I would be finding a way for him to play out of ball screens and run the second unit. That's what I would be doing. But we'll see how the Pacers see that.